Hello everyone, welcome back. I had some very interesting thoughts when thinking about how far away the sun is and how these people back in the day with the lack of equipment measured the distance of the sun. And so this got me investigating these people who already were under suspicion because you look at pictures of them and you see that they all have some of the same tools, and it's interesting because it makes it look like they have connections to one another, or at least hung out with the same types of people, the same groups, whether it be Freemasons or Royal Societies. They all seem to dress the same, look the same, and pose the exact same way in all of their pictures. So very interesting, some red flags there right away. But before I dive into looking at these people and their characters, because it's very funny, it's kind of scary though when you dig a little deeper and find out some things. But one of the first people I came across when looking into this and how we got the calculations was someone named Christiaan Huygens. And this guy was the first director of the Royal Academy of Science, and guess what year? 1666. He also died at the age of 66. I looked it up to see if he was 66.6 years old. I thought that would be interesting, but no, he wasn't quite there yet. But not surprised here at all that a lot of these guys have, pretty much all of them are either a part of a Royal Society, Royal Science community, or a Jesuit, or a Freemason. They are all of those, even a lot of alchemy in there. We'll go into that in just a little bit. But the way they said this guy found the distance to the sun and was very accurate was that he used the phases of Venus to find the angles in a Venus-Earth-Sun triangle. For example, when Venus appears half illuminated by the sun, the three bodies form a right triangle from Earth's perspective. Guessing correctly by chance the size of Venus, Huygens was able to determine the distance from Venus to Earth. And knowing that distance plus the angles made by the triangle, he was able to measure the distance to the sun. That's very interesting, because when you think back to the tools they had, which was their eyes, and looking at the sun, which pretty much would kill you. No, I'm just kidding. It would not be good for your eyes to stare too hard at the sun back then, and they didn't really have solar filters, but they had Venus they could see, and the moon sometimes at the same time, but when it was half lit, and you can see the sun. From your perspective, standing on the Earth, looking up at this, you have no clue how far either one of these is away from you, or how large Venus is. There's no way to guess how big something is if you don't know how far away it is. There's no way. These could be side by side. The light from this could be shining onto this from being directly beside it instead of 93 million miles away. So these are bogus ways to guess these distances, and I'll show you another example here like this. Looking at this, here's someone looking at the sun near, it's around sunset, and a plane is passing by the sun, and look, there's Venus. If we were to try to form a triangle, could you tell me which one of these, the plane or this little dot, is further? No, you can't. It's impossible to tell which one's further. This could be a toy plane. You would not know. I just tossed it up in the air, took the picture real quick, threw a ball up in the air. You cannot tell. It is hard or nearly impossible to tell how far away things are in relation to the sun and in relation to you, unless you know. And we actually do know how big a plane is. But even then, it would be impossible to say how far away the sun is unless we know how big the sun is. And then you look at NASA images. Here's Venus. Looks like it's right next to the sun, as if it's about to go into the lava pit that they make the sun look like, about to dip itself in there. And here is a bird that is about to land on Venus, which is how it appears, because you cannot tell how far away this is compared to this, or the sun. It is nearly, if not impossible, to make that observation with your eyes from Earth. So again, not possible. You can see here is the moon and Venus. They look like they could be right next to each other. So lots of things to consider, but let's look into these people. They are very interesting to say the least. And one of the first who caught my attention was Tycho Brahe. He brought the sun to 13 million miles, a mere 10 million more than Copernicus. So this guy, pretty smart, And I saw this picture of him and it made me think, what is going on with the nose? Why do I keep seeing pictures of this guy with a funny nose? Well, come to find out, he had a fake nose because he got into a fight with someone with I'm guessing they had a sword, and hopefully, I'm guessing he won because all he lost was his nose and not his life. It was over a math problem. So debating math, he got into a fight with a sword. There must have been alcohol involved unless he was just that big of a nerd. But this guy was wealthy. He had like 1% of the wealth in Denmark because his father saved the king's life. So Tycho Brahe, quite an interesting life, but that's not where the interesting part stops. Not only did he lose his nose and wear a fake nose, this guy was not only a believer in the geocentric model, but he also kept some rather unusual company. And it says here in this article I was reading about him that he had a rather unusual group of regular entertainers. He employed a little person called Jep. I'm guessing when they say little person, like a dwarf or a midget, who Brahe believed possessed psychic powers. Jep was his court jester and spent most dinners under the table. It's probably best not to speculate on just why Brahe preferred that arrangement. Sorry, that part cracks me up. That's very weird. Very weird to say the least. That he had a little midget love slave. I don't know. But then there was Brahe's elk, a tame beast. So he had a tame elk that Brahe kept as a prized pet. The elk met a rather bizarre end, reportedly drinking a lot of beer while visiting a nobleman on Brahe's behalf, after which it fell down the stairs. I wish they had video cameras back then. And died. Yes, the entire sentence was about an elk. So that was something very interesting when looking into this stuff. I didn't expect to find something very comedic. But it says, still his life seems almost dry and tedious compared to his mysterious death. He died of a sudden bladder disease in 1601 while at a banquet in Prague. He was unable to urinate except in the smallest of quantities, and after 11 days of excruciating agony, he finally died. At least that's the official story. It's possible he actually succumbed to mercury poisoning, as later researchers have detected toxic quantities of the substance on his mustache. And he did have a really nice mustache, by the way. So that's intriguing and weird all at the same time. But it gets even stranger when you look at what happened after he died. Because you've probably heard of a man named Kepler. I'm sure you've heard that name. And this guy took all of Tycho Brahe's work. When Tycho died, he had compiled a lifetime worth of observations that he kept to himself. And Kepler confessed to taking this work because there were no really heirs of his stuff, because his children were considered illegitimate, because they were from a commoner like you and I, unless you're royalty and you're watching this. I doubt it. But he took them and kept them and took credit for many things that Brahe worked his whole life to find out. So I thought that was interesting. But then when you look into who Newton was, it gets even stranger, because Newton came along after Kepler, and he is known for discovering gravity when an apple hit him in the head. This guy was best known for his laws of gravity, but in his free time he dabbled in experiments worthy of Voldemort. It says, like the Harry Potter villain, Newton actively sought the Philosopher's Stone, a mystical tool that allows mere mortals to turn any object into silver or gold, and has the power to grant eternal life. In his new book, Isaac Newton, the a-hole who reinvented the universe, author Florian Freistetter, if I'm saying that right, depicts Newton as a thoughtless genius with no social skills and a harsh demeanor, who despite his scientific acumen was also devoted to alchemy. You heard that? He was into alchemy. And so was Tycho Brahe, because they later found out that Tycho had a lot of gold in his hair, and it's enough that where they realized that he was working with gold quite often to have it enough to have it in his system, which is very common of alchemists back then. They weren't aware of a lot of the hazards that occurred with mercury and gold and certain metals. So he was an alchemist, just like many of them were. They dabbled in alchemy, which has its roots with the wisdom of the fallen, and all of these wizards and alchemists are credited with giving us the heliocentric model. And it took people like Newton, the alchemist, inventing things like gravity to keep us on a ball Earth, a moving ball Earth, through space, because people would not buy that. You know how dumb we thought it sounded when people said the Earth is flat and we thought you'll fall off the edge? Back then, saying Earth is round, people had the same pictures. So we needed guys like Newton and their wizardry to come up with things like gravity to make it all work. And he did not care how far away we were from the sun, whether it was 28 or 54 million miles. He said that either would work well. It doesn't matter as long as it's far away from us. As it continues to get further, that is okay. No big deal. You don't have to get it right. As long as Earth is no longer at the center, that's all that matters. And then, in most current times, you finally see someone that we have a picture of named Robert Ball. I had never heard of this guy. He was also a royal astronomer. They all have connections, like I said before, to some sort of Royal Astronomer Society or Royal Science. Freemasons, they're into alchemy, lots of weird things. These are some really strange dudes when you do some digging. None of them are quite the geniuses that I thought they were. I thought they were just honest geniuses holding a compass in their hand and dressed really fancy. But no, they are all quite strange, had weird upbringings, most of them making their observations with their eyes, looking up at the skies, which is what a lot of us are starting to do now. You're not supposed to question the people who are of royalty or royal scientists funded by the kings and queens and all of that. And that's why a lot of people didn't. When you saw that you were just a commoner, you probably said, well, there's no way that my intellect could match these guys. And it's only now that we're asking these questions and questioning these wizards like Newton and finding out that maybe they aren't so smart after all. And maybe they're the same types of people that are still writing our science books today and our history books. So it's important that we expose them for who they are and find out why they lied in the first place, so that we have a better understanding of who we are, what we live on, what our purpose is, because it's been hidden from us. It's simple reasons, and the elites, or whatever you want to call them, the ones who are working for these powers of darkness that have had a stranglehold on our minds and our souls for so long, are starting to freak out. They're getting scared. They're doing major damage control. No longer is burning books a thing. They are just deleting our work and our research, trying to turn us against each other. We need to unite, seek truth, find the main source of truth, which is the Holy Spirit, that will disperse the confusion in our mind. We will no longer be divided. We have to come together before it's too late. As you can see, time is obviously running out based on the amount of things that are happening and prophecies being fulfilled in these last days. So thank you all for what you do. I know this video was all over the place and kind of crazy, but I wanted to share some things that I've been finding lately, and we'll be back soon with some more discoveries, especially those that involve the Word, because there are some beautiful things there as well that we'd like to expose, because there is a love and joy out there that so many are missing out on because we just get so focused on all of the darkness. So again, thank you guys for all that you do, for all your support, your prayers, your testimonies. We love seeing them on a daily basis. Thank you guys. God bless.